Science!
Man. 7 million years ago, our first closely related ancestors set foot upon our little blue planet. What makes a man a man?
Is it advanced culture, portion sizes, or homemade tools?
We've narrowed it down to a few things: cranial capacity, power grip capability, and the ability to make tools. The first ancestor in our documentary is Chilanthropus chidensis, also known as the desert man from Chad.
The first fossil record of the desert man was from 7 million years ago, found using biostratigraphy. With a robust skull and a flat face, desert man had a cranial capacity of 357 centimeters cubed, with derived unape-like teeth. The foramen magnum's location on these ancestors was halfway between chimp and human, which might show the first signs of bipedalism.
Argument why? So, is the desert man from Chad
A human?
a human?
I don't think so, Max. And here's why. He still had partially honing teeth, so it's like a little razor blade of a tooth to like slice flesh.
And I also heard that the owning teeth also sharpen themselves
Yes, they do.
as they bite.
Yeah. And he still shows tree climbing traits, and that's a big problem for me, just because humans don't really spend that much time up in trees.
No, that's true.
Apes do.
Ewoks do as well.
Ewoks, yes, Ewoks. So that's really the first thing. I mean, he shows signs of being bipedal, but it's really only because of his foramen magnum location, which is in the middle. It's in between where humans and chimps' foramen magnum is. So he was slightly upright, but
Not totally.
Not totally.
Yeah.
Not fully wrecked.
This sounds like he is an animal.
Our next specimen is the Ornithogensis, or better known as the man from the hills. It lived in East Africa around 6 million years ago. Its environment would have been tropical.
With no complete records of Ornithogensis, we truly have no idea how big its cranial capacity really was.
It's a proposed biped. Chimps are also partially bipedal. Therefore, an animal.
Our next ancestor is Ardipithecus remedis, also known as the ape-like thing from East Africa. They walked the earth around 5 million years ago. With more than 60 individuals discovered, these ancestors show signs of brachiation and proposed bipedalism.
Ardipithecus remedis had a cranial capacity of around 420 cc's, which, it's about the same size as a chimp today. So really, and they have some tree climbing traits like a grabbing foot. They're partially bipedal walkers, but they're not runners, which makes me think that they're not human.
But the foramen magnum is the same place as humans.
Conclusion? Animal.
Our next species is Australopithecus afarensis. It lived in South Africa during a drying period.
Most notably, the fossil of Lucy was found. Found 60% complete. Her remains showed that afarensis was bipedal, which means they walk on both legs, like you and I.
Another notable find was the Dika baby, whose teeth showed that these hominins matured much earlier than expected.
Afarensis had a cranial capacity of 420 centimeters and a power grip.
Afarensis had curved toes and fingers. However, they did have a convergent big toe, meaning their big toe was like ours.
Their only primitive traits were a very pragmatic face and a large sagittal crest for chewing fibrous stuff, like wood chips.
They also had more derived teeth, meaning that they didn't get cavities.
Conclusion: animal.
Our next species is Australopithecus africanus. It lived in South Africa during a drying period.
Australopithecus africanus. These brothers hung out in a lot of caves, and they had about a cranial capacity of about 440 centimeters. They had brachiating shoulders, partially bipedal, and they might have used some tools. I would have to say that these are definitely human. Slap them out up here.
Our next specimen is the Australopithecus sediba, or the southern ape from fresh or sweet water. They lived about 2 million years ago, and so far 5 remains have been recovered, 2 of which are complete.
This species originated from South Africa and showed tree climbing abilities as well as partial bipedalism.
Our sweetwater ape also showed signs of large frontal lobe, which meant that it had the ability to plan. It had a cranial capacity of 420. These little buggers had hands just like ours.
So is it a human? Since their cranial capacity is so small, we've only found 2 full remains. This sucker's an animal right here.
That wraps up our gracile forms of our Australopithecine friends. Next is the Paranthropus, or better known as the robust Australopithecines. Living almost 3.0 million years ago, these hominids were specialized for the cooling trend happening at the time. With food sources becoming limited, hominins had to become more creative.
Paranthropus translates to alongside man. These fellows had a cranial capacity of 530 and were big, hardy, and robust with large, broad faces and heavy cheekbones.
Since these big, meaty men are kind of like us, you would think that they would be up here on the human side. Unfortunately, they had a very specialized diet, which led them to die out after their food source was gone. Which means I'm going to have to put them right here, which is the evolutionary dead end. I'm going to draw a little line, since I'm eco-friendly, right down there to the garbage, because that's what these guys are. Garbage.
Australopithecus boisei lived 3.1 million years ago. Its name meant Southern East African. It had a deeper DMJ, thusly avoiding lockjaw, and was less prognathic. However, it had a dish-shaped face and a sagittal crest.
Gracile form of robustus. You know the thing about them, not a specialized diet. They were able to survive and thrive.
Our next genus is the Homo group, and the first one is the Homo habilis.
The next guys are Homo habilis. They lived a long time ago, roughly 2.3 million years ago. This is when the cooling age stopped and started warming up again.
Homo habilis had a CC of 631 and was the first hominin to be distributed around Africa.
Their name came from tool making. They made Oldowan stone tools to get their jobs done.
Australopithecus robustus was dying from a special diet. These fellows were known to be butchers and scavenged the dead bodies of their deceased hominin brethren.
Homo habilis was bipedal and had high motor skills. With all of that information, there's no way that we can say that Homo habilis is not one of our descendants. So we're going to put him up right here on the human part of the tree. Homo erectus, also known as as the first runner. He was the first to leave Africa and populate Asia and Eurasia.
Homo erectus lived during the Ice Age, which was about 10,000 years ago. Homo erectus had a CC ranging from 750 to 1250 centimeters cubed and had about 5 separate races dispersed across the land.
These guys also had Acheulean hand axes made out of stones, horns, and bones.
Are they human?
Yes.
Our next species is Homo heidelbergensis, named after its discovery in Heidelberg, Germany.
These guys experienced a cranial expansion from about 1400 to about 1650 and had fine motor skills.
They had racial variation like Homo erectus, but used Lavoie tools, which were a little bit more precise than those Acheulean hand axes.
With wider peridials, they also had more development for hand-eye development skills and language. The verdict?
Human. These are the Neanderthals. Scientists would like to say they aren't very closely related to us. They're on their own little side branch of evolution. No one really wants to talk about how closely related they are to us. Luckily for you guys, we're not nobody. Reaching out to around 1500 cc's, which is much larger than us. They also had an occipital bun to help keep their heads warm by circulating blood, and a slightly pragmatic face, which made it easier for them to breathe in cold weather.
They are built like football players and used Mousterian tools. These tools had specialized functions like shovels and axes.
Neanderthals created tents out of animal bones using their Mousterian tools.
They were hunters and utilized close quarter combat and were injured quite frequently. But what's very amazing about these creatures is that they knew a thing or two about medicine, and fossils would indicate that they had broken bones that were healed over time, and there was punctured lungs as well.
They also buried each other. The earliest graves date to 90,000 years ago. The bodies were placed in a flexed position like this. They also had possessions in their graves, such as musical instruments, meat, and tools, which shows that it might be the first signs of thoughts of an afterlife.
The shape of their hyoid bone would suggest that they had a language similar to humans. However, it was 1 centimeter lower than it is in normal humans today, and their tongue was further back. They also, however, have the FOXP2 gene, which is found in humans today, usually associated with speech disorders.
I call those Hater points, which makes us believe that they had a language similar to ours, which means we're going to classify them as humans. Homo sapiens sapiens were equipped with a 1350 cc on average, and they had a big frontal lobe for high motor skills and long-term memory.
They walked upright and don't show any signs of tree climbing. They also had tools.
Obviously, we don't have that much to say. These are humans. If you want to try and dispute that, go ahead. You're going to lose against any scientist you come across. Wisdom thus completes the family tree. Get that glue on there all nice and white. With a little puppy thing. It's Homo sapiens sapiens right there. Right there.